With the quorum present, I'd like to call this meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee to order at 6:33 p.m. This is a regular meeting for the month of May. I can't believe we're here already. And the agenda was posted in advance of the meeting as required. The meeting is live streamed, and a copy of it is always posted on YouTube. I'd like to introduce myself, Darlene Mann, and the Budget Committee members present for tonight's meeting, who include Tony Stinizzi, Matt McGuire, Raul Blanchet, Tom Solon, and Tom Whalen. Brian Rader and Dave Blinn have excused absences for this evening. And I'd also like to take a moment to introduce Kelly Seeley, RBA, who is also participating in tonight's meeting. If you could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'll ask if there are any agenda adjustments this evening. Our agenda kind of falls in line with what our typical May agenda looks like, with a food service overview and a financial and school board update. I'll appoint Matt as the meeting observer for this evening and look for a motion to approve the minutes of the April 27th meeting. From Tony, seconded by Matt. Any comments, changes? Seeing none. All those wishing to vote in favor and approve the minutes of the April meeting, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed and abstentions. Raul, 2. That's Raul and Matt. Abstain. Great. Seeing no public present, we'll go over the public input and move to the general business section of the agenda, which includes. We're going to start with a food service overview. I sent everybody with the package presentation that Kelly will be speaking from this evening. So I'll turn it over to you, Kelly.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to start, I'll just go through all the slides kind of as they are, even though I know most of you know all this, but people that might be listening may not know it all. So the review of our staffing structure, Amy Cassidy, thank goodness, is still our Director of Student Nutrition. She does a fabulous job.
How long has she been here, Kelly?
Well, this is actually her second time here.
Right.
So, wow, altogether, she's probably more than 10 years.
Oh, wow. That's
great. We split her salary 45% in the co-op, 30% in Hollis, and 25% in Brookline. And the employees that make up the whole department, when we're fully staffed, are as follows. Each school has one head cook. The high school has a cook and 4 food service workers. The middle school has 3 food service workers. We also have a really part-time piece that's administrative support, and we try to use one of the workers that we have on staff to fill that role, because who's going to want to work for 9 hours a week? So that works out well.
So that person doing the administrative support, they're helping track like orders and like student accounts and things like that?
To some degree, but there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be filled out, so it's really to take some of the heat off of the work that Amy does, some of the more simple projects, but it's not a lot of work, and she's doing that for all 3 districts.
Right.
Yeah.
So that lady or that person is an administrative assistant to Amy?
Yeah, it's a non-union position,
okay,
because we don't have anything like that in the union, so yeah, she gets like kind of two ways of paying her, so. Okay, and then the program, as you all know, we're in the National School Lunch Program, and what is that? It's a federally assisted meal program. It's available to public, nonprofit, private schools, or public and nonprofit, private residential child care institutions. And the primary focus is to provide nutritionally balanced lunches to children each day. The benefits we receive from that are cash subsidies, we get USDA sourced foods, and we have access to free training, resources, and program assistance. So in return for that, they'd like us to give lunches that meet the federal requirements, and they also ask us to offer free and reduced lunch prices to the eligible kids.
So does, aside from meeting the federal requirements of what, like, the nutritional balance needs to be in a given meal, are we restricted in any way from sourcing some of the food? Like, it's federally assisted, so do we have to buy food from federal sources? Can we source things locally, or?
No, you can get food anywhere you'd like.
Okay.
So, and I know Amy does get a lot of the produce, not all of it, but a lot of it will come from local markets as well. So,
Question?
yes,
A few years ago, we went through a period where apparently the food being offered wasn't too popular,
right,
and the system was losing money.
yes.
How are things, are you going to talk to that point
Yes.
in
Yes.
this presentation? Okay.
Yes, Amy has really turned around the program, just in a nutshell. So we don't have that issue anymore, and some of the things that I will be saying will show you why. Okay, so the financial components that we track, and this is sort of mandated by the federal program as well, is the expenses broken into salary, food, non-food, and equipment. And then the revenue sources are local, state, and federal. And the local is the parent paid for parent payments from lunches, and also we do some catering. So, you know, whatever isn't a state or a federal is generally a local source of revenue. And then we have a fund balance in food service, just like our general fund does. And any revenue in excess of the expenses is subtracted from the fund balance. So you could end the year with more, you could end the year in a negative state, and whatever that situation is, you would add or subtract that to the fund balance that we hold for the food service. And we can only have 3 months of operating costs that we can hold in reserve. The rest of it, we have to have a plan to spend it, which I'll also mention something about later. So for FY23, the challenges, and this continues to be the same for many years now, that kind of started with COVID, and we haven't yet recovered, and that is staffing. So in both schools right now, they're short 1 position for the entire year. And that's challenging enough on its own, but then if someone is sick, they also have to cover that absence as well, and it becomes very impossible to meet the demands. So we try to use substitutes as much as possible, but they're on short supply as well. And to complicate things in the middle school, they had all new staff this year. So we have a very dedicated staff across all 3 districts that continues to step up despite being down 1 person and trying to cover for people who are out, and they are frankly overworked and tired. Another challenge that we've seen this year, and not in previous years because of the free lunches that we've been offered by the federal government, are the negative student balances. So we have many parents that are still transitioning, I guess, from the free lunches to now they have to pay. And right now, the negative balances in the co-op are about $5,000. Another challenge is supply chain issues. That has improved. It used to be a daily occurrence in which there were very creative solutions to get kids fed over the last year. But now they're down to more periodic issues. They last 2 weeks, maybe a month. But one of the new issues is the fresh produce that we're getting, not so much locally, but probably from the USDA mostly, is low in quality. So that seems to be the theme this year. And then, of course, cost of food and paper goods has been increasing. Many prices have doubled over the last 3 years.
Can I just ask a couple questions about the negative student balances?
Yeah.
So, if a student is carrying, so we have My School Bucks, which is the account system that we use so that families can like load their students' basically lunch account,
Yes,
and
yes.
students have a card or an ID number that either gets told to the person at the register, or they swipe a card or
Right.
something like that, right? So if a student's balance is negative, I know that, I believe that we still have to, offer the student, like the main meal.
Yes.
Can't say no to a student,
Nope,
but
cannot.
we can limit, like, the extras,
Right,
and
anything
like the
à la
sides
carte,
and things,
yeah,
anything à la
right.
carte, thank you. So, for these families that are in this situation, how do we plan to like recoup that? I'm sure maybe do we put families on payment plans, or?
Well, we don't really have anything set up to do a payment plan, but we
Yeah.
do have, the food service staff is regularly sending letters out and
Yeah.
contacting families to get payment, and we also involve the principals as well. And they have been actually very good at getting some of the payments. And one of the biggest problems is getting families to sign up for free and reduced.
Sure.
Because we have a lot of families that probably do qualify, but they just won't do it for whatever reason.
Right,
We
right.
do crack that nut once in a while and get a number of them to sign up, and then that pretty much solves that problem for that family.
Right.
But that's a big challenge. We do also have some funds that are donated on an annual basis that we can use, but we only use those towards families. Like one that should be on free and reduced, we
Right.
might use those donated funds to help them until they get
Right.
onto that program.
So is there a way to transfer the balances, say, from my school bucks to a more generic, like, student obligation platform, so that at a certain point, like prior to graduation, you
Right.
have to pay your obligation?
And
To,
that is.
like kind of the same way
yeah.
you pay like your class dues and things like
Right,
that?
that is in place, so
Okay.
you're not, theoretically wouldn't graduate if you
Or
had
like
a
get your
large
prom
balance.
tickets or your parking
Right,
spot or something like that?
exactly, all of those, that becomes one of those things, right?
Right.
But we haven't really had this problem to a certain, to this degree, so we'll see how much we can collect before
Right.
those kids graduate. And, but if we do end the year with a negative balance in the food service, I mean, negative accounts, though, that actually transfers to the general fund, so,
Yeah.
yes, lucky for us.
Question. You mentioned that the principals are involved and other management staff between the student and the principal are also involved. Is that based on a process by which, for example, if so many days go by and nothing's been done, the matter is elevated to the next level? Is that how it works, or?
I'm not 100% sure that it's that organized, I think it's when they get to a certain dollar amount more than tries, it's more, okay, this is getting to be a really serious amount of dollars, so we'll ask the principals to step in.
And is there a way to differentiate families that really need it versus people who are just lazy and not paying?
That's a hard one, it really is, because without having families go through the application process, it's hard for us to know if they
Right,
qualify or
right.
not. I would say that there are certain families that are on our radar as ones that we know should be on it.
Right, and having like the
But-
principals or the counseling department
Exactly.
involved,
Well,
kind of
legally,
help
you're
sift
not-
through those issues.
Right,
and
and
Legally,
make
you're not allowed to
determinations.
transfer them without them knowing about it, or at least signing some.
To
Form.
get them to
Yeah.
sign up
Yeah.
without their
Right.
consent, no, we can't do that. They
Okay.
have to be part of that process. And as Darlene said, we do get the counseling staff or the special ed staff involved when they know certain families are, in need. So it's not just that we're throwing darts or anything like that.
My sense is that given the amount, it almost seems like the effort in trying to collect that is more expensive than the amount owed at this point.
Well, it could be. I mean, this is an unusual year that we have that high of a balance.
Right.
So I think it's really a result of twofold. People are just not used to paying for lunches, and we have to get them used to that again. And the fact that people are not signing up for free and reduced, so.
Do you have a number of what is the average amount that's owed an individual?
Oh.
$5,000 is a lot.
Yeah.
Seems like a lot, but spread out over.
It's,
Next
yeah,
phase.
it's probably, I mean, there might be someone that owes $500, maybe even $700, but I think most of the balances are more in the $100, $200 range, I'm gonna guess. I
Yeah.
didn't look at it that way, so I'm not really sure.
That seems even high, I would think.
Yeah, it
There's
is,
a lot
and
of-
that's why we're
Less
kind
than
of,
$100.
yeah, right.
Because to get up over $100.
Yeah, it
means
takes
that
an
there's a
effort,
problem
yeah.
On the collection side, letting people know that they're
Right.
in arrears.
Right, and we have been doing that, I promise, that is a
Yeah, sure.
daily effort. Okay, so next up is, you can really see the effect of free meals that we went through during the COVID era, shall we say. In FY '20 is when they started late in the year in March, giving the free meals. So even then, you could see an effect there. But FY '21 was even more dramatic, and last year was just off the charts. I really don't know how our staff, they were even more shorthanded last year. I don't know how they pulled this off, but
And
They-
this is just for the co-op.
yes, this is just for the co-op. So, right, and you can see this year is more like FY '19, but fortunately, we are ahead for the most part. I mean, it's not, I can't exactly say that for lunch, as compared to FY '19, but this is just through March, and that is the whole year in FY '19, so I think we probably will surpass that.
Have average meal costs changed significantly up from previous years?
Well, no, we have the same prices now this year that we
Okay.
did in FY '20.
That's good.
Yeah, we did not increase those prices as a, trying to help
Yeah.
families transition. So, right, we haven't increased them.
It's interesting that the 2 years of the free breakfasts, a lot more breakfasts this year now, people buying. So they must have
Yeah.
liked the breakfast there
Yeah,
compared
isn't
to 19 and 20.
Isn't that amazing, yeah. Well, and hopefully, all those free lunches and breakfasts got people, hey, this is a great idea, I like this, let's
Rather
keep doing that.
eat breakfast at
So-
school.
Another way of looking at this is that we're still in a transition period.
Right, we
So,
are,
you know-
exactly. So I'm hoping next year we will not have the negative balances that we have now, because we'll get people
Right.
more used to the fact that they have to pay now.
Kelly, how were we compensated when the program for the free lunches and free breakfast all the way across the board were available? Is it rolled into other compensation, or was we getting separate monies in to cover that?
No, it's just, we were compensated in the same way we are now, so it's just the number of meals, and I'm talking full meals.
So you
because-
just send in an account and you get reimbursed?
Yes, that's exactly what happens.
Okay.
So, any other questions on that part? Okay, the next page kind of gives you a historical look of the meal counts that we just saw there for a few years. And you can see that, the trend is pretty much the same as what I explained. You can see that we've increased more or less over all of those even earlier years to where we are now. So hopefully that will continue.
And those are for the full meal, so we're not doing any tracking of.
No, it's.
Of
the-
any of the, like the à la carte
Yeah.
or anything like that. These
I-
are just like full eligible for reimbursement.
Right. I don't even know if we are tracking those.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking, like, I saw a note about like smoothies being available at breakfast, and for somebody, a smoothie could be breakfast, but it doesn't count like as a meal,
No,
So-
it's a very specific
like combination
requirement
of things.
of things, yes. Okay, next up is our historical financial view, and this goes back to FY11 to what we're estimating for this year. Now, because of all of those free meals that we were reimbursed for in FY '21 and FY '22. We did end up with a decent, in FY '21, it was a decent fund balance, but in FY '22 it's quite large. Large enough that the state has required us to have what they call a spend down plan, and which we have done, and that will go towards making some improvements in our kitchen that we've been talking about for several years, so now we'll finally be able to do that. The only issue I have now is the timing of equipment, because, you know, I think everyone's trying to do this right now. So that could be a little dicey, but I believe we'll be able to make those improvements in this summer, and I'll go over those a little bit more.
Kelly, what are on the revenue side, what are commodities?
Those are the USDA foods that we get from they track those separately. And this year, you'll also see the second to the last line there, we're anticipating about $120,000 in excess revenue that would go to the fund balance as well. And I just want to point out that that sounds like we're doing really well, but that number is probably almost 100% due to staff shortages. The reason that we have that is we're not paying people because we're short-staffed. So don't get too excited about that.
So between the spend down, I'm expecting the answer to this question to be no, but in the past, there have been requirements for when we have to change the price of the meals.
Yes.
I'm assuming because we're ending up with underruns, that we're not going to be mandated to increase.
We are not mandated, but I'm currently looking right now to just see if we should, like if we're going to be, because we have, you know, a fairly decent support staff increase in wages next year.
Right,
So
that was
I
my
want
next
to make
question.
sure that, I want to look at it in terms of if we were fully staffed, should
Right.
we be increasing maybe even a small amount? So I don't have that answer yet, but I'm looking at it, yes.
Okay, so, and then just a quick question about the, and I'm sure you'll get into it, the spend down plan, but you said that we're allowed to keep 3 months of expenses. And that then, anything over that triggers a spend down plan? Okay.
I got a question. We have the problem of $5,000 that is owed, and we have an excess. Have we thought about, or can we offer an incentive for those people that owe money, that if they get into a program, fill out the forms for the program, they'll get a forgiveness of what it is that's owed. That way, you solve two problems. One, going forward, they'll be in a subsidy plan.
Well, except for you have to do it every year.
Exactly. Well, that'll have to go for next year.
Yeah, no,
I'm not
right.
sure I would give it to students that are
Sure,
graduating, but,
sure.
you know, what I'm saying is that we want to solve the problem.
Yep.
And we want to get a way to get revenues recognized by those people being in those assistant type
Yeah,
programs.
I'm sure we could do that. In fact, I'm not
I mean, that's an incentive to
Right.
get them to do something.
sure that they haven't already been offered that, so, but
Okay.
it's a great idea, though. I will follow up on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the financials?
What 3 months do they use?
It's like an average operating cost.
But is it from a prior year, or is it the most
Yeah,
recent 3
I believe
months?
it's from the previous year.
So do they just take a year and divide it by 4? I'm just trying to figure out, because the expenses vary fairly significantly year to year.
Right. No, I believe, if I recall the memo we received, I would believe they would take the FY '21 year for, when we're talking about FY '22, and that would be, you know, that cost, and on average, what each month would be.
'Cause I'm just wondering
9 months.
How long do they give you to spend it down? Because if we make it to the next year, now we're at a point where we're no longer below because the average has changed dramatically from 22 to 20.
Well, it's supposed to be a short period of time. You probably could stretch it to 2 years, but because we're trying to do the kitchen in the summer, I'm not really sure I didn't test that to know what the maximum is.
To what?
You could probably get a year or so.
Yeah, I'm thinking they would let me
Implement the
take
spend
2
down plan.
years.
No, it's more a question of if they're calculating it based on an anomalous year or an anomalous quarter,
Right.
It could be off
can you,
significantly.
I would think they
can
would
you
wanna
wait
do it.
and
No.
say,
Yeah.
well, look at what our
No.
expenses are?
No, you can't wait.
Or can you appeal, I guess, is more the question. Can you say that you're basing it on a quarter that is not typical?
True, and I'm sure I could attempt to do such a thing, but it's not, it's subjective. It's not a specific,
I would think about
thing.
doing it as a running average, consistently.
they don't do it
Yeah.
that way, though. I'm fairly certain that they don't, so.
No,
Would
I'm
be
just,
most accurate.
we're fortunate that we can spend the surplus and not
Right, we have a need.
and not get hurt.
Yes,
But I could see in another circumstance, they said you're over and you know that you've got upcoming expenses.
Sure.
I guess it's just forcing you to perhaps act earlier than you might otherwise.
right. I mean, I think they just want to make sure that fund balance is 3 months. And how you get there, I'm sure there's some leeway to that, but I've not tested it, so I don't know how far we can take that, so. Okay, any other questions on the financials then? Okay. I just want to take a moment to mention the accomplishments that the food service department has achieved, knowing that they're shorthanded. They always seem to pass their health inspections, which is great news, with high praise. We are also part of the New Hampshire Buying Group, which is a membership sort of thing, and there's many schools in the state that are part of that. And because of that partnership, the buying power is increased, and they do save money in that program. And then these are some of the things that they have done and I believe this is why we have increased some of our numbers. And they are, they have a lot of different choices, and they're trying to meet the different tastes of the students. And so for instance, they have salads that they've started to offer a lot more than they used to. They also now have vegetarian options, which they didn't for a long time as well. And then breakfast, well, that kind of answers your question. So breakfast now includes smoothies and the yogurt parfaits.
I think we should have a field trip to have an understanding of the selections and maybe do some sampling.
Well, that's not a bad idea. Or I can just have it brought here. Maybe we'll
Why
see
not?
if I
Yeah.
can do that.
Especially
Okay.
the smoothies and the yogurts.
Yes, especially that, okay.
I
I'll
did
see
that,
what
I
I
did
can
that
do.
once to a private prison.
Well,
And you'll find that they'll make you sit with the inmates.
Oh, my. Yeah, maybe you want to sit with the students.
well, I'll take my chances with the current staffing of the under Amy and.
Okay, and then on to FY24 challenges. Obviously, you've heard me say this a million times now, and that is getting to and staying fully staffed. We are constantly looking for people, and we are constantly advertising for people. So we're hoping that next year will be we have seen it has been a lot easier to hire people recently, especially in the custodial world. So I'm hoping that will translate to the food service workers next year. And then this is always a challenge. I'm sure if you've ever had a teenager, you know that it's not easy to get them to eat their fruits and vegetables. And they need to do that because that constitutes that meal we get reimbursed, because many of them are just refusing fruits and vegetables. So
But
that
it-
becomes.
That doesn't count.
that
But
becomes
it
an-
seems like this is a fact of life. Every year we hear the same stories, you know?
Yes, you do, and will continue. But that's still a challenge. And then,
So
Yeah.
would a vegetarian meal still be considered a reimbursable meal?
that's a good question.
I mean, it would have some kind of protein
Right,
source.
there might be a way to make that into,
Yeah.
I'll have to ask Amy that,
I
that's
just-
a very
yeah,
big
just-
question. Okay, and then, of course, maintaining and increasing participation, I don't think we'll ever get to the levels of those free meals, but, we definitely would like to increase participation as much as we can. And then another challenge is the cost, and that's always balancing the high cost of our food now because it's going up. The supplies and the labor goes up, all of those things are going up without sacrificing the quality. And that is definitely a challenge on top of being short-staffed. And then under our strategies for future success, again, getting back to fully staffed is a critical component to be really successful.
Kelly, when were we last fully staffed, in your recollection?
I think probably, in FY '21 before COVID, FY '20 before COVID, I think we were, I can't say that across every district, but I think in the co-op it was fully staffed at that time.
Are they part-time positions which you're having difficulty filling?
They're all part-time positions,
Okay.
even the head cooks. And yeah, that is a
Is
challenge.
that do you think rather than it being COVID, it's more a question of people's decisions about what they're willing to do for work and what schedule? Do you know what I mean?
Sure, it could be that. I definitely think COVID was the reason when we were in COVID, for sure, because we couldn't hire anyone anywhere.
Yeah.
So that was a big issue. Now, I think it's just, there's a lot more choices out there for people, whether it's part-time or full-time. We saw exactly the same thing with the custodial staff.
So do you think that that's pay-related, pay scale?
I think that might have been a factor because you could have gone to, McDonald's or Target or anything and make a lot more money than we're offering. So I think that did have a big impact. And our salaries for next year in the co-op for food service, for all of our support staff are significantly higher. So I think that's why we're keeping the people that we have now. And hopefully that will be attractive and competitive to the other school districts around.
Do you think we're competitive with private sector, though?
I don't think we're as competitive as we probably should and like to be, but I think we made a big dent, yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out why someone would even want to work in the school district. It's a part-time job, so I assume it doesn't have benefits. We don't pay as well.
Right.
What would it cost us? Have we looked at what we think it would cost to be competitive and fully staffed?
Well, we did look at that when we came up with the wages for what we'll be paying next year. I think we pushed that just as far as we thought we could push.
Based on, what prevented you from pushing it further?
Not being at all certain it would pass the voters. We weren't certain this last time it would pass the voters because we went from like an 80,000 increase to 162, I think it was. That's double, basically.
I also think that we're probably in a transition period, so we need to give it
Right.
more time to look back and see how
Right.
it worked and
Right.
whether we need to do any further adjustments.
I'm just
Right.
looking at the fact that we're repeatedly overfunded by the model that is imposed on us, because every few years we get hit with we gotta pay down, we gotta spend
Right.
something. But we're also saying we're having an ongoing problem with staffing, and we recognize the fact that we're in a state of significant high employment rate and competitive wages. Certain jobs are not commodity opportunities. Teachers are competing with teachers. Administrators, you're competing with other administrators. My guess is that these employees, we're competing with almost every other retail and food service general market. So the model that we have to show being competitiveness is different than it is for our professional staff and another segment of our support staff. So I'm just wondering if we're handcuffing ourselves to this ongoing process of creating a shortage, which in turn makes it a more difficult work situation, which adds to the difficulty of staffing.
No, it's a very good question, and I think this next year will tell us a lot, and then we'll be negotiating again, so,
Well, the support staff contract is now for we've got 2 more years on it.
right, we've got FY '24 and FY '25. So in FY '25, we'll be negotiating.
So it'd be 3 years before we'd make a change
Well,
through
2
normal
years.
negotiation cycles. Well,
Well, it'll happen in the third year.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that will give us a lot of good information, I think, what happens next year.
And how, well, I guess it's a conversation for a later time, when we consider negotiations again, but there are a lot of different, getting to your issue of the positions and where the competitiveness is with other market conditions and things like that. The support staff contract is a combination of all of the roles. So you
Yes.
have administrative assistants, custodians, food service, all under one
Right.
contract. So it's
It's
unless.
hard to cherry pick.
Right, right, I mean, in these, yeah,
we've done it in the past through the categories of
Yeah.
those.
Right, and
That's what I
we
was
did
just gonna
that,
say.
we just did that with this most recent negotiation where most of our food service workers were in category 1.
right.
So they're next year in category 2, plus there was a significant increase. So these guys are getting a pretty hefty increase. That's why I'm saying that will tell us a lot if we can fill those positions because of that pretty large increase that they're getting, so. Raul, you look like you have a question.
Well, I was gonna say, next time there is negotiations with the union, for example, maybe there could be a specific discussions regarding the different types of categories of employees, right?
We certainly can do
And
that.
adjustments could be made then.
Yep, we can do that.
That could be part of the negotiations.
Okay. The second strategy that we have is Amy really wants to create a forum for student and parents to have input in the lunches, so that perhaps that is another method for increasing or maintaining at least the participation.
Do you do surveys?
It's really hard to do surveys for students right now. There's a lot of requirements behind that, so we have to be very careful with that. So I think this is her way of dealing with
Okay.
that roadblock, so. We also want to continue efforts to cook more of the food from scratch, and that, of course, is dependent on having a full staff. And then offering more choices while mindful of the food waste and attention to detail. And then lastly, under our strategies for future success is our kitchen upgrades that I touched on. The things that we plan to do are revamping the serving line. Right now, the style of it is like an elementary school serving line, and we want to go to a high school style serving line, which I think has a lot more choices in front of you to choose from. And then we also will have a more efficient, what they call grab-and-go section, that will have an additional POS, so that will allow more students to get through the POSs that we have. And then we'll be removing the current dishwasher, which is a beast. It takes up way too much room, and it will be a right-sized dish machine that will be extremely useful. And then we're trying to do all of this with space limitations. You know, ideally, we'd love to have a brand-new kitchen, knock out a few walls, and push the cafeteria and make it bigger. But this is what we can do right now. And then I mentioned earlier that timing is everything. We have equipment that will be coming that we're hoping will be here in time for installation and be ready for the students. The worst case scenario is we just have to be a little creative in that transition until we get everything and get it installed. But I think we'll be able to make it work.
A quick question. I know we have some balances in like Fund 23 that are those kind of special donation buckets. And I seem to recall, we haven't looked at that in a while, but I seem to recall there were a couple of lines that were like from the Dairy Association or things like that. But oftentimes the categories of donations have very specific like spending
do.
parameters that go with
Yes,
them.
they do.
But I'm sure that's something you're looking at as well as you're looking at like equipment changes and things like that to
Right.
see if there are any just smaller
Yeah.
pockets of money.
There's a couple possibilities, but I'm not sure the principal would let go of some of those.
Yeah.
You know, because they may have their eyes on it for other reasons.
Yeah.
But definitely, if we run into a situation where the spend down plan doesn't cover everything, we'll be looking at things very closely. Any other questions?
Great, well, thanks. We always appreciate these, we don't have an opportunity when we go through the budget cycle to kind of talk about things like this, so it's nice to kind of at least take a little, portion of a meeting and just kind of think about things again and kind of see where we are. Glad things are, on their way.
Yes.
And I think Amy does do a fine job of
She does.
managing things across the 3 districts. I'm sure realizes some efficiencies with menu planning and things like that.
Oh,
with,
definitely, yes.
Between at least between the elementaries, if not across
Right.
all of the schools,
Right.
so. Great. Anything else?
Just one quick question. What times are lunches served in the high school?
Oh, boy,
Do you
I'm
know?
not sure I can
Yeah.
answer that. There's a couple of different times, I know that, but I don't know
Didn't they have like
specifically.
4 lunches
I
or
think
more?
I think
Yes.
it's down to, I'm trying to remember, like, when, last time I looked
Yeah,
at
it
like
seemed
my
like they
son's
started,
schedule,
they
it's always,
started like at
it's in
10:30
period
in the
4.
morning and-
Right,
I think
Period
it's-
4 is always the same class every day, but I don't remember the time.
yeah, it's probably 3 or 4, I'm not sure if it's down to 3.
I think it's 2 periods that are cut in half or something like that.
Oh, it could be.
So 4 lunches, but it starts early, I think.
It does start fairly early,
I'm-
like
I'm just-
10:30 or
I'm
something
curious
like
if you
that.
see a difference in the participation rate at different hours.
I don't know, that's interesting.
Oh, just a quick question about catering. I'm sure Amy thinks of a lot of different things, but I'm wondering if for things like when the district is hosting track meets or state championship tournaments or anything like that, if there's any opportunity. I know that Booster Club and parent organizations use those times to, raise money for teams and things like that, but I don't know, just trying to think of different ways you could even, have things available for students after school, but I guess there are machines by the gyms that the
There
kids can
are.
get Gatorades and drinks and things like that, so.
Right, and again, I'm gonna come back to that word that starts with an S, staffing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, in a perfect world, when you're 100% staffed, you can have all kinds of great ideas
Yes.
and try things out, so. Maybe next year.
Maybe.
Well, great,
Keep our
thanks.
fingers crossed.
Appreciate the update, and if anyone thinks of anything later, feel free to reach out and we'll follow up with Kelly and Amy.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, Kelly, since you have the floor, we'll just continue, and I shared with everyone the latest financial view that was shared with the school board during their May meeting. So Kelly, if you want to just take us through that.
Sure, absolutely. So in looking at the expenses, you'll see that we are about 1.2 million underrun of the budget. And I would say by far, most of that is related to student services or special ed. We, again, have students that are leaving the district or changing a program or refusing services in some cases. So that is where we're getting most of our underage there. There's not a whole lot to talk about with revenues. It's fairly on base except for food service and our NHRS reimbursement, both of which are higher than we expect. And then the overage, as I mentioned, in food service will go to the food service fund balance. So before we factor in the needs for FY '24, we stand at 1.3 million in our unreserved fund balance. And then we start subtracting things that we that the voters voted on for FY '24, like the maintenance trust at 300,000, the special ed trust at 25,000, and the contingency fund at 125,000. I skipped over the retained fund balance just because I want to note that I have a figure in here as a placeholder, and that's at 2%. The district now, as of the annual meeting, can hold back 2.5% if they wanted to, and that would be 498,000 instead of 398,000. So that the school board will vote on that in August, so it could be a different number. But as a result, using that estimate anyway, we have a projected fund balance of 456,000. And as I mentioned to the school board in my recommendations, we have told the voters that we'll give back $200,000 to offset the tax rate. So right now, that really means we, as of this report anyway, as of May 9th, we only have $256,000 that we're looking at as a final unreserved fund balance. And I asked the school board to consider a couple of things if that number gets larger, or even using that number, to consider for what they might want to spend that money on. And at the top of the list is the dugouts at the high school. We want to put those in for the girls' field. And we don't yet have an estimate for that yet. There was an RFP that went out, and that should come back very soon. We also are looking at the main entrance here in the middle school, making that the same kind of entrance that we had, the same kind of renovations that we did at the high school, in which they have to buzz in 2 different ways and be let into the main office in a little different way than the middle school has right now. And that cost is $120,000. We are also looking at exterior cameras in the middle school. Of all the schools in SAU 41, they are in the biggest need of having some outdoor exterior cameras in places that they don't now. And then we will always be looking to add interactive flat panels. Those have been a huge success, and we need, in order to have them fully supplied for both buildings, we need 44 more. So we could use some of those additional devices. And that is my report.
Did we did the district apply for any of the SAFE grant security
We did.
updates? Did
and
we?
We did not
We
receive any funds. They seem to be favoring those applications that went more to the access control, and we
Right.
were asking for a radio system for all 6 schools, which we did recently apply for a federal government grant on the radios, so we'll see if that gets us anywhere.
So, as it stands now, if this projection were to go through as shown, although we've said that we want to give 200,000 back, if we didn't spend anything more, we'd be giving back 450,000.
No, just 200,000.
So if you,
Oh, no, I see what you're saying, yes. If it stands as it is, that's what we have available to give back,
Okay.
yes.
So what you will give back is at least 200,000.
Well, that is always our goal.
Right.
But, there could be a year that you only end up with $11,000, we can't.
Yeah, right.
no, the point, and I think what you're picking up on, the point is that we've set a target of at least 200.
Right.
For this year.
Yes,
And the things that you've outlined, Kelly, are potential uses for the difference between what we project and that 200.
yes,
But if we did not do those other things, this projected would all go back. It's not, because you've already
Correct.
taken although you've taken the projected 2%, we could increase that by 100,000 approximately.
You could increase that or decrease it, either way.
No, but I'm just saying, so we can't go more than 100,000, more than what you've projected.
Correct, yes.
So it's at least 356. If you take 200, so we've got at least 156 there in that range. I'm just trying to make sure I understand where all the math adds up.
Okay.
It wasn't a goal to maintain a fund balance to go forward to
We
next
can't.
year.
We can't. Yeah.
So you got 456,000, you're giving back about 50% of it, so what happens with the other
Well,
200,000 that's
if the
sitting
school board does not want to spend any more at all,
Yeah.
then all of that goes back
Okay.
to the taxpayers, yeah.
And do you have cost estimates for each one of those topics that you mentioned, or?
Not the dugouts.
I don't have anything for the dugouts.
But the other she does.
Well, I've left it vague on the cameras and the flat panels because it depends on two things, what the dugout number is and what the school board wants to
No,
spend.
He's asking, do we know what it costs? We know what it costs per flat panel.
Yes,
So
we do.
And we know.
And the cameras, I don't yet know that cost, but I should very
Yeah,
soon.
so we'll have an idea, and really what it comes down to is whether or not the school board feels that that money, that's the best place to pay for those things.
Right. And I will also say, I forgot, that on the dugouts, we do have the opportunity to use some of the athletic capital reserve funds. They have some balance in there that we could translate to this.
Is that the revolving?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's money that's comes in from the pay-to-play.
Yes, yes.
Kelly, Hollis Recreation is about to buy 4 more dugouts. So it might be helpful to combine those and see if we can get a volume discount on that.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
I think that would be good to kind of put them together in the,
Who's the contact that, do you know?
Yeah.
Erica Korea.
And Brian knows that person.
Brian is Erica.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
he
will-
definitely knows.
Yeah,
I'll put that in Brian's ear.
I think that would be, I mean, if nothing else, it'll streamline the process, because that way only one person will be chasing the numbers on it.
Right, yeah.
It's been proving very difficult to get RFPs even acknowledged
Really?
out there, yeah,
Wow.
it's,
How about if everybody with a dog brings their dog at the same time and just tells them there's something in there? Get them to get.
I mean, as a matter of opinion, I would be in favor of spending some resources on security-related additions or improvements.
Well, just to be clear, the dugouts are something that was brought to us by some parents on behalf of their students, and it would, if I'll categorize it as an oversight. I don't think people are aware that there's only, of the 4 teams of that type, boys baseball at middle school and high school, and girls softball, I think at the high school, all have dugouts, but the middle school girls do not. And that was brought forth as being a concern for the health and well-being of the participants, as well as questions of discrimination.
So there are softball dugouts at the high school for the girls.
the high school has dugouts,
Yeah.
they're
For the
above ground,
girls.
not dugout, but.
Well,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah,
they're dugouts.
it's, those, yeah.
They
The
have
middle-
shelter.
The middle
They have
school
shelter.
is where the dugouts are.
It's the middle
going.
school, okay.
Yeah.
I
It's the
have
middle
bad
school.
information.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the middle school that needs the dugouts.
I didn't realize that. Okay. Well, great, thanks for the, obviously the results, but also the kind of that heads up and overview of the potential encumbrances. And of course, we go through an audit where there are some adjustments and things that get made, and
Right, yeah, because even
are
the
part of a
numbers.
determination of what our kind of
Oh,
end
100%.
result is.
We're never
so.
going to get that number exactly right when we do
Yeah.
June, because there's too many other things happening to
Right.
wrap up the year, so, yeah.
Okay. Moving on, we're making good progress this evening. I think everyone's anticipating a basketball game. But it was a pretty, it is a month with a shorter agenda, so Tom will kind of move to you for the school board overview as I shared with everyone the link to the board packet. It was a pretty lengthy packet.
It was a pretty lengthy meeting.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'll let you kind of,
Okay.
share any highlights you think are pertinent and.
Well, I think the biggest thing that caught people's attention was the number of new hires. We had, I think, 4 or 5 resignations, but had 12 new hires.
Oh.
And at least 4 of them were very senior hires, so up at the higher end of the pay scale. And I don't know if, Kelly, if you've done any analysis yet, but I'm wondering if,
No.
yeah, we're waiting to see where that nets out as far as budgeted staffing payroll comes. So that's going to be a big question. But on the plus side, we're told that we had large candidate pools, which speaks highly of the way that the district is viewed. And it's not strictly based on salary and benefits. We are back in the mode of, say, we're competitive, but we don't have a competitive edge in terms of pay.
Or maybe there's some level of prestige
Oh,
associated with the
well,
name, right?
I think the big thing is working conditions, and I believe that our administrative staff plays a big role in that. I think that the degree to which we have a functional boards, that we work cohesively, the budget committee, the school board, and the respective select boards. There isn't always agreement, but there's a level of civility and cooperation that is not present in many of our neighboring communities. Many neighboring communities have experienced, I would categorize it as our rebellion among the voters to some of the dysfunctionality. And I think it's a tribute to our communities that we have preserved it through some tough times. So the good news is we get the candidates, and the students are benefiting from that directly because we are getting good people. For example, we are going to have a legitimate tech ed teacher in the middle school again, and we haven't for 1 year or 2 years?
Just 1 year, yeah.
1 year. And that's a really, really tough role to fill. It often traditionally came from people from industry, but there's a requirement that they be a teacher when you're in a public school system, and getting that combination is often tough to do. We have some staff turnover in the social studies, science, languages, all of whom the candidates that are coming in appear to be very well qualified. So that, to me, was one of the big highlights. The other thing that did happen is based on recommendations from the superintendent and with the approval of the school board, the administrative contracts are being brought in line with the professional staff contracts with regard to how their health insurance is compensated. The percentages were somewhat off, and it was putting us in an awkward position because in many communities, from a competitive standpoint, administrative contracts are, for lack of a better word, richer than most. Oftentimes with 100% paid health benefits. And in our district, just because of sequencing and some historical activity, the administrators were not getting the similar to the professional staff as far as percentages paid. So monetarily, it's not a big difference, but perception, it was a big difference. So that, I think, was a very good thing to be brought before the board. Again, it's something that we look at the CBAs very closely. The minutia of the individual administrative contracts come up every year, and we don't always pick up on that, so that was another good thing.
Are the administrators' contracts multi-year?
No.
No,
There are, the superintendent's is, but other than
the
that.
others are as well.
They are?
Yeah, they're usually 2 to 3 year
Oh,
contracts.
the principals?
Mhm.
Oh, I didn't, oh,
Okay.
we have to approve them every year.
Right, you approve the new salary on
But the
an annual
contracts are
basis.
longer?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Yeah, now that you're mentioning it, yeah. So the salary is not, there's a range in it, so the actual numbers is approved every year, but yes, they're multi-year contracts. Any questions? It's all yours.
I wasn't here at the last meeting, but personally I want to welcome you.
Oh,
back
thank
to
you,
the,
Raoul.
Welcome.
It's been a while since I've been attending these in the flesh.
So one quick question, Al, the additional positions, were some of them kind of filling the positions that have been unfilled for a while? How you said that there was more new hires compared to resignations?
No, we've had a lot of turnover. We've had large number of resignations the past couple of months. So we had 5 this month, and we had 5 the previous month. So what often happens is that we get caught in the summer where people don't renew, but haven't really given us that sort of information. Fortunately, we've gotten the notices in sufficient time, but the big deal is that we've gotten the responses to the ads quickly and created a large pool for them to choose from. What I'm told is that it was like a other side of the coin burden, that in the past, they've been struggling to get candidates. This year, the struggle was to get through all the candidates.
Tom, is there any discussion about when we negotiate contracts with, in particular, the teachers' union, finding a way to enforce the contractual language around length of stay for teachers? In other words, we have teachers who leave before their contract expires when they're contractually obligated to remain on staff.
There have been discussions. The nature of those discussions have been non-public conversations with our legal team.
Okay.
There has in the past been a fairly successful communication among districts, I'll call it almost like an anti-poaching thing, where if people are, because the superintendents know you get what you give. But a bigger factor in recent years are teachers who are leaving the profession, who are moving into industry or other life choices. And in those cases, you don't have that same recourse. So it becomes a question of, is there the ability and is it worthwhile to try and enforce a contract? And a lot of it comes down to what's the best benefit for the students. The reality of it is if someone does not want to be in that classroom, do you want that person in the classroom? And I think that factors into some of the decisions as well.
I was thinking more along the lines of an out clause that, there's some penalty. you can get out, but you can't just leave
Yeah,
and ignore your agreement.
no, that's an interesting option. I do believe it will be something that gets discussed in the upcoming negotiations because of recent activity.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate the summary. I don't have any other announcements or anything other than our next meeting, which is in June. It'd be the 22nd of June.
I will not be able to make it.
Same here too.
Oh,
My
man,
my conference
gosh.
is June 20 through the 22nd.
Oh, that conference you were just
Yeah.
talking about? Okay.
Oh, Darlene, I just wanted to mention that based on the input that you provided last meeting about alternates, Beth has been designated as the alternate member to this committee.
Oh, okay, great. Awesome.
So if I know in advance that I'm not going to be able to make a meeting, I will be in touch with her and try to get her lined up
Okay,
for it.
great, awesome. Thanks
But
for
if you
sharing
could add her onto the
Yep.
distribution, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I was thinking of that as a
Thank you.
perfect. Awesome, that's great. All right, it's 7:40. Seeing no other questions or items, I'll look to Matt as for a process observer Rito.
Good, efficient meeting, as always, and Kelly, lots of good information. Really appreciate all the detailed info and stuff you bring all the time. I think it really contributes to our discussions here.
Thank you.
So I think overall, good meeting.
Great. So with that, at 7:40, I'll take a motion to adjourn
Make a motion to
from
adjourn.
Raul, seconded by Tony. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 0. Great, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Are we off